The Baltimore Ravens getting ready to steal DeAndre Hopkins away from the Cleveland Browns and the rest of the NFL. We talk about that and much more coming up next here on this episode of Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Ostreicher, Ravens Wire. We're here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here today with us, making us your first listen each and every day. You can subscribe for free, both in video form and in audio form, wherever you get your podcasts. And today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by Bird Dogs. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNFL. And when you enter promo code LockedOnNFL, they'll throw in a free custom Bird Dogs Yeti-style tumbler with every order. We're back here. It is Thursday. We're almost to Purple Friday, so hang in there. You know, the week, if you're grinding through it, we are almost to the weekend. And we're here on Locked On Ravens, providing that daily Ravens content 5 days a week. I appreciate all the support. If you're listening every day, if you're an everydayer on the show, or if this is your first time or somewhere in the middle, welcome into the show here. We're, again, 5 days a week Ravens content. So Monday through Friday, we do bring that. So updates, analysis, anything Ravens, you can keep it here, Locked On Ravens, for all of that. And if you have a friend or a family member who wants Ravens content, be sure to throw them over here our way on the channel and the show. But we have a lot to talk about today. And I know, look, the DeAndre Hopkins thing, I get it. It's been a long time where we've been talking about DeAndre Hopkins. A lot of shows spent on him. But look, it's the content that is being out right now. It's the content relating to the Ravens. You know, my dad, he gives me advice on the show sometimes, and he said, if you talk about DeAndre Hopkins one more time, you talk about him so much. Look, I can't help it. So I'm sorry, Dad. We're going to have to do it again today, as there was new information regarding DeAndre Hopkins and the Ravens, and maybe why they could be gearing up or getting ready to potentially steal him away, pry him away from the Cleveland Browns in the rest of the NFL. So we'll get into the latest update on the Hopkins situation and just kind of revisit why it would or wouldn't be a fit and what it's kind of looking like for them in terms of adding Hopkins to this roster. And in the second part of the show, we'll be talking about Danielle Hunter, who I think would be amazing in Baltimore. There was some reports that surfaced on him yesterday and his standing throughout the league, and maybe he could be moved. So we'll talk about him potentially in Baltimore, and we'll expand on that in either a show, either maybe even tomorrow's show or a show later down the line here. Then in the final part of the show, I do want to talk about comments from OTAs a little bit more, dive a little bit deeper into what John Harbaugh had to say, Kyle Hamilton, and even Chuck Smith, and what they really wanted to hammer home during their media availability. So planning to talk about on Locked On Ravens. Let's first start off with DeAndre Hopkins. And if the Ravens are gearing up to steal DeAndre Hopkins away, pry him away from the Cleveland Browns, and obviously that'll be the case the rest of the NFL. Now, there's been a lot of speculation about DeAndre Hopkins, right? Where is his next team going to be and where is he going to play? Because obviously he was released from the Arizona Cardinals in a move that I don't think was totally shocking. Arizona's just on a much different timeline than Hopkins right now. Hopkins now gets his choice as to where he wants to play. If you remember, he was traded from Houston to Arizona, so didn't necessarily get a choice in that matter. And it seems to be taking his time a little bit. We actually got news yesterday that Hopkins will be first taking a visit to Nashville with the Tennessee Titans. But my whole inkling almost the whole time was, what about Cleveland? There's the Deshaun Watson connection. It feels like a lot of people in Cleveland want Hopkins there. Obviously, the Browns traded for Elijah Moore, but they also have Amari Cooper. I think Donovan Peoples-Jones showed something. I love Donovan Peoples-Jones back when he was drafted in that draft class. But Hopkins would obviously take that team, or honestly, whatever team he goes to another level. We got an update from Josina Anderson. Well, first, Mary Kay Cabot, who said that, the Browns want DeAndre Hopkins, and DeAndre Hopkins is still wanted by Deshaun Watson, but it's a long shot for now. No free agent visit to the Browns is scheduled, and they're not looking to add a big name receiver. So it's more Deshaun Watson, honestly, than Cleveland at this point, where it feels like Deshaun Watson still wants him, but maybe Cleveland not so much, as they're not looking to add a big name receiver. And Josina Anderson chimes in, someone who is very highly respected within NFL circles. I respect her very much as well. And she said in Cleveland, it would take a change in team circumstances and or a change in initial contract expectations. My understanding is Baltimore will monitor his free agency. Other info is in her podcast. She does great work on the crew and with all her work. But that's the interesting part. Look, she said her understanding is Baltimore's going to monitor his free agency. Who knows what that actually means? Maybe they're going to check in on him and see what happens. Maybe they have already, and they're just going to monitor where he visits and what the word is with him, essentially. But this is a new piece of information that we did not know, basically, when I'm recording this 24 hours ago, less than that. And so we're going to see if the Ravens are truly serious about adding a player like DeAndre Hopkins to their offense. And the stuff that we've talked about already, would he be a fit? It's more of a luxury at this point in terms of an actual need. The Ravens already added Odell Beckham Jr. They still have Rashad Bateman. They drafted Zay Flowers. They also signed Nelson Aguilar, and they have Devin Duvernay and a bunch of other guys too. But the top four that I keep looking at here, Hopkins, Beckham, Bateman, and Zay Flowers, that is incredible. That is an incredible top four where, Hopkins would be the best receiver on Baltimore's roster. No disrespect to any of the other guys on the roster. DeAndre Hopkins, I think, is the best receiver on Baltimore's roster if he's added. And he's a player that he can go up, catch contested passes. He attracts, defensive attention because of how good he is. And he's still I still think a top 10 wide receiver in this league. And it's funny because a lot of people are saying, well, you have to add an edge rusher. You have to add a cornerback. And yeah, I agree with that. I very much so agree with that, especially in the edge room, as we kind of will take a look at that more in the second part of the show here. But sometimes the best defense is getting better on offense because you score more points. You keep the ball from the opposing offenses, and that can work out. So for a team like a Cleveland or a Kansas City or a Buffalo, all of which honestly seem like long shots now, personally to me, it feels like DeAndre Hopkins is valuing a contract more than he is a fit or a winning situation, which again is his own thing. He can do what he wants. So I've always made the point that different players value different things. Some players value money more. Some players value winning more. Some players value fit or culture. Everybody in the NFL, everybody within sports, honestly, everyone in life has differences in terms of what they want to value at certain points. And if DeAndre Hopkins wants to value contract, wants to value money at this point, then that good for him, honestly. Like, seriously, it's up to him what he wants to do and what he wants to prioritize. Now, that's not going to land him in a Buffalo or a Kansas City or maybe not even a Baltimore, who right now has about $11-ish million, $10-ish million in cap space. But at that point, maybe Tennessee does make the most sense. There were rumblings of Houston early on. I know that has kind of faded, but I really did think, I firmly did believe it was going to be Cleveland. It just made sense. The Deshaun Watson, DeAndre Hopkins connection in Houston. I mean, I thought that's what it was going to be. And again, I think a lot of people in Cleveland do want him there, but I don't know. It doesn't feel like that's going to happen anymore. And for Baltimore, if they're going to monitor a situation here, bringing in a player that I think would elevate their offense and keep them away from those division rivals or conference rivals or a competitor in general, it would take up probably most, if not all, of Baltimore's remaining cap space. Now they do have avenues in other areas where they can restructure guys, create a little bit more cap space. But we also do know that the Ravens like to keep a little bit of change in their back pocket. So we talked about that a little bit with Spencer Schultz of X52. You can check out Tuesday's episode. We had a really good conversation about DeAndre Hopkins. And again, do I think a move is likely for Hopkins? I still predict it's not going to happen. I think Baltimore, again, monitoring a situation could mean they're going to keep up with it, or it could just mean they're going to check in and it's going to be, oh, okay, not really what we're looking for at this point. Maybe we'll come back to it, or just keeping tabs on it. It might be very serious. It might be literally not serious whatsoever. But again, this new piece of information adds a little intrigue to the whole situation, because we were talking about before DeAndre Hopkins was released from Arizona. It was, well, how are they going to make it work contractually with the base salary? I think he had a $19 million base salary in that deal for 2023, and then the extra year in 2024. What's the draft capital going to be? This is a situation where, again, the Ravens talks with Odell Beckham apparently messed everything up in a trade for DeAndre Hopkins in Kansas City. That pairing to become something. Feels like Buffalo's a long shot at this point. We now are hearing Cleveland, is a long shot at this point. I don't think we've heard anything about Kansas City at this point, but they don't have a lot of cap space. So where's a fit for him? Maybe it is Baltimore. And it'd be really cool if the move happened. I'd be on board with it 100%. But again, my gut feeling just says it's not going to happen right now because I think Baltimore, again, the contract might be a bit of a holdup. And then at the end of the day, I think Baltimore's biggest needs are still at cornerback and obviously at edge. So coming up in the second part of the show, we'll be diving a bit more into the edge conversation, talking about Danielle Hunter and where he could fit with the Ravens if he's moved there. So be sure to stay tuned, plenty to get to on Locked On Ravens. But first, this episode is brought to you by Bird Dogs, and I'm really excited to tell you about Bird Dogs because they make you look good, and I mean that, and I know that because I have experienced it firsthand. Bird Dogs stretch khaki shorts are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg, giving you a truly sculpted look. And they have really stretchy material. It's also very comfortable as well. And the Bird Dog shorts do the exact same thing as Lululemon, but they fit way better. And fit's really important to me because I don't want to be uncomfortable walking around. And Bird Dogs also gives you the really sleek and really nice look. And they fit way better than the regular shorts that are made of, that stiff, restricting cotton. And again, the movement factor of this for Bird Dogs, super important. Bird Dogs fixed the issue of movement by inventing cloud knit fabric that looks just like khaki but stretches so you can get a way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice movement. And my nickname, it was Khaki Kev growing up. I wore a lot of khakis, so the khaki look, to me at least, I value that. Bird Dogs has me covered with that. And Bird Dog uses anti-stink sweating wicking fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day long. So go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNFL and enter promo code LockedOnNFL for a free Yeti-style tumbler with your order. That tumbler is sweet, by the way. I would highly recommend getting in on that. That's birddogs.com/LockedOnNFL for a free Yeti-style tumbler. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off, we promise you. We're back here, our second segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still here with you, coming to you after Game 3 of the NBA Finals. The Denver Nuggets, my team, beating the Miami Heat. They go up 2-1. The Heat are a tough team, I'll tell you that. I'm hoping Denver can pull out 2 more wins, but we will see. Finals are not easy for any team, and Denver's still figuring some stuff out, but glad they're able to pull out the win. We're talking Ravens here, though, on Locked On Ravens. And a really interesting angle that we're going to take now is in the edge room. We've talked about maybe bringing back Justin Houston, Yannick Ngakoue, Jadeveon Clowney. One guy that potentially could be on the table for Baltimore is Danielle Hunter. He's a Minnesota Vikings star, and there were reports coming out yesterday that teams are calling the Vikings about trading for Danielle Hunter, and the interest is pretty serious. Now, a team that would acquire Danielle Hunter, first of all, who is Danielle Hunter? Minnesota guy, and 6'5", 263. So he is a long, big player. And he has been someone that really has helped Minnesota in their pass rush department. Came in the league in 2015 and ended up having 6 sacks in 14 games his rookie season, then burst onto the scene, 12.5 sacks his sophomore year, then 7 sacks, 14.5, so back-to-back 14.5 sack seasons for him. Missed all of 2020, came back in 2021, had 6 sacks, and then 2022, 10.5 sacks. This would be a perfect fit. A team acquiring Danielle Hunter would only be on the hook for $5.5 million because he has a $4.9 million base salary right now, and then $600,000 in roster bonuses. I think $100,000 in workout bonuses, and then an extra $500,000 in a roster bonus. And then there are 2 void years on that contract. But again, a team acquiring Danielle Hunter would only be on the hook at least for $5.5 million in 2023. That is an absolute steal for the quality of player Danielle Hunter is. People look at the injury situation with Danielle Hunter. Again, missed all of 2020 and then only played in 7 games in 2021. Before that, aside from his rookie season, played in all 16 games for 4 consecutive seasons before the NFL obviously went to 17, then played in all 17 games in 2022. He's a 3-time Pro Bowler, has gotten votes for Defensive Player of the Year and Comeback Player of the Year. He was in that conversation. This is a player that I think the Ravens should seriously look into acquiring. He can play both inside or outside. Personally, I would use him on the outside, but just let's look at the state of the Ravens edge room right now, the outside linebacker room. We've talked about it before. Right now, the Ravens have Odafe Owe, David Ojabo, Tyus Bowser. I think that's a fine trio, but to rely on those guys, Odafe Owe, I think, needs to have a big year. And look, I'll put my trust in him for this year. But if he doesn't, that's disaster, especially if you don't bring in another veteran. I'm assuming Baltimore will bring in another guy, regardless of if it's Danielle Hunter or not. I think the most likely fit is probably Justin Houston, bringing him back for a 3rd year. But to me, if Owe can't produce, if Ajabo is kind of working through things, essentially this is Ajabo's rookie season. Had, one tackle was a strip sack on Joe Burrow. But if he's still working through some stuff and figuring out where he fits at the NFL game, which, look, if that's what happens with Ajabo, that's completely okay, especially at that stage in his career. But obviously, it's not ideal for the Ravens' on-field success. Tyus Bowser, I think you can rely on as a veteran in that room, but he's not like that pure pass rusher, go out there and get 10, 12 sacks a season guy. He can go out there and get you probably 6, 7, 8, but again, you want to use him in a very versatile role. I think bringing in Danielle Hunter would be the move. And honestly, I think that would be a move to me over DeAndre Hopkins. I would love DeAndre Hopkins in Baltimore. I think I'd like Danielle Hunter in Baltimore even more based off of need. DeAndre Hopkins would make the offense explosive. We talked about the top 4 guys with Hopkins, Beckham, Bateman, Flowers. But Danielle Hunter would make me feel so much better about that edge room. Edge is a real concern for me right now for the Ravens because I don't know what to expect from Odafe Owe in year 3. I don't know what to expect from David Ajabo, again, essentially in year 1, technically year 2. And then Tyus Bowser's that guy, but they're 3 deep right now at that position. I just think they need more. And it's not every day an opportunity like this comes up. I think Baltimore could get away with trading maybe a 5th rounder for him if, the Vikings are saying, well, we're going to lose him anyway in free agency next year. Maybe that's what they're saying, and they can take anything. I would go up to a 4th. I'd honestly even go up to a 3rd if I were the Ravens to go up and get Danielle Hunter. I think the fit is just honestly that good, and it's really important for them to get another guy in that edge room, especially a veteran. Danielle Hunter's 28 years old right now, and he's also an LSU Tiger, so he'd fit into the Patrick Queen, Odell Beckham, LSU prerogative that goes, Marlon Humphrey in Alabama. The Ravens love their Alabama, and so another LSU guy to combat Marlon Humphrey in his Alabama takes and in Alabama fandom. But I still think with the Ravens now, they're set for the most part on defense. It's just the holes that they have, the really, really glaring ones, are both at edge and corner. Now, there's been a huge debate about which one of those needs is bigger. And before Rock Ya-Sin, 100% it was corner. They do bring in Rock Ya-Sin. I think that's a good fit for them, primarily an outside guy. We've talked about Marcus Peters, talked about, what are the slot options like Chris Harris Jr. or Bryce Callahan. But with Rock Ya-Sin and Marlon Humphrey, you have 2 very quality guys. Marlon Humphrey, is going to be a top 5 guy. And then Rock Ya-Sin, I think, a very solid 2/3 option. It's the rest of those players that you're thinking, well, where is Trayvon Mullen going to fit? Where is Pepe Williams going to fit? And Jalen Armour-Davis and all those guys. In the edge room, it's can Odafe Owe break out in year 3? Can David Ajabo step up in his first full NFL season? Can Tyus Bowser continue to bring that consistency? I just think with the Ravens being essentially 3 deep there, I think Tavius Robinson can give you something. I just don't think he's going to give you a lot in his rookie season. A player that needs development, he can give you that inside-outside versatility. Maybe if an injury happens, he steps in. But I'd feel so comfortable with pretty much everything but who's going to play in the slot for the Ravens if they were to go out there and get Danielle Hunter. And this is a player that, again, is a star. Like the Ravens, this would be – it's great to think about because – of the fact that they have so much uncertainty at that position, but coming in with just the stats I read out with Danielle Hunter, what he's been able to do so consistently, where again, I preach consistency on this show. I do, has not had a season below 6 sacks since, his rookie season. Well, technically 2021, he only 7 games, 6 sacks. I mean, I'll take that. Essentially his rookie year, he had 6 sacks in 14 games. 2017 is 30 year, he had 7 sacks in 16 games. But then other than that, double-digit sacks in 4 of the 5 years. So I this is a guy to me that makes a ton of sense. I would love it if the Ravens were to make this move and bring him in. We'll talk about it a bit more throughout the course of the rest of the week and heading into next week. But I honestly think this is a no-brainer for the Ravens, unless, there's something I don't see. Maybe there is. But I really do think this is a great fit for Baltimore if it were to happen. Coming up on the final part of the show, though, we'll be diving into some comments from the Ravens' latest open OTA session. We'll be breaking those down in more detail coming up next here on Locked On Ravens. We're back here, our final segment, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher rounding out your Thursday here of Ravens content on this show. And thank you so much for tuning into the show, making us your first listen each and every day. Again, be sure to subscribe on YouTube, follow along in audio form as well. You can subscribe there for free, both audio and video, same show. both audio and video. So if you want the graphics experience, we're working with a new graphics package here for the first week. If you want that, be sure to check us out on YouTube. But if you're driving to work or coming home from work or you're on the go or just want to listen in audio form, be sure to do that as well. But let's now get into some comments from the Ravens' latest OTA session. We talked about this a bit yesterday, but I want to get to it in more detail. I think there were a lot of good comments we just didn't have time to talk about yesterday. So starting with John Harbaugh, he had a lot of praise for both Nelson Agholor and Laquan Treadwell. He's a guy that John Harbaugh said Nelson Agholor has been on point, been here every day, and, looks rangy, has the big catch radius. And I think he's, said all the things that you saw today. I feel like he's been doing all along, John Harbaugh said. Agholor, we talked about him yesterday, how he's been a star of OTA so far. And someone I think, again, who you would like to have as your 4-5, which was where the Ravens have him right now, pending a DeAndre Hopkins move. But he can step up in the event of an injury. And that to me is also, you want some sort of veteran experience. Agholor has experience throughout his NFL career, obviously Philadelphia, Las Vegas, in New England, which was his latest stop. I am excited to see Nelson Agholor. Again, it might not amount to much. Maybe it doesn't work the way they want it to. But I'm excited to see whether he can be that deep speed guy because, again, that's what he's been known for. The 18.7 yards per catch was his best year, his only year in Las Vegas. He can be that deep field stretcher for them, and I'm excited to see what he can do in that regard. Other things John Harbaugh had to say when talking about Treadwell, saying he's another former first-round pick and said he's physical, worked hard in the workout and knew what he was doing essentially less than 24 hours ago ever since coming in. And I think that said a lot about who he is, John Harbaugh said, and said he'll be in the mix as well. Also talked a little bit about the competition, said, not really feeling a competition right now because they're not competitive yet, but he's impressed with the work ethic of guys. And that's what you want right now. Obviously, you're not going to go full, offense versus defense every single moment of practice. This is still, install period, especially for the offense, working on getting those guys up to speed, but the work ethic is there. And John Harbaugh said they're doing a good job learning the offense, practicing, and all of that too. Now, John Harbaugh did respond to J.K. Dobbins in his tweets. We talked about this part yesterday and ended up talking about how he said he didn't look at it, but Chad Steele, who's the senior vice president of communications over with the Ravens, told John Harbaugh about it. And John Harbaugh said that essentially what his interpretation of it was, he said, JK saying that he wants to be back, but he doesn't know, and said that he would probably agree. The Ravens want JK back, but who knows the future. And, he said, can anybody tell me if he's going to be back? That's what he was kind of going at. But said he's going to work hard. The energy's going to be high. He's going to be in great shape, and he expects great things from him all year. Also talked a bit about Kyle Hamilton and someone who we talked about yesterday. We had a great conversation about Kyle Hamilton yesterday if you want to check out that show. But ended up saying that Kyle Hamilton is not going to be the nickel per se. Said he's going to be a safety. And the traditional safety role isn't necessarily in their defense because they move guys around. So John Harbaugh said the safeties rush the passer. They play linebacker, running from the line of scrimmage and back to the deep middle. So, again, the versatile role, we talked about this more in detail on yesterday's show, but the very versatile role that I think Kyle Hamilton is going to play, it's going to be really important, especially for a team that did lose Chuck Clark and is going to be relying on him a little bit more to move all around the defense. Now, talking about Danielle Hunter, John Harbaugh ended up saying that seeing where he can play and giving him every opportunity. He worked a bit at guard, Danielle Hunter did, and said that, he can stay a little bit more square, but his feet look good. His hands look good. He's able to punch quickly and react pretty quickly with his hands as well. So, look, he said he wouldn't rule him out as left guard. And also said Ben Cleveland's been working with both sides. They've got him working right tackle now. And then Saleh said he's doing a nice job in there too. So he said there's going to be a fight for that spot. And I 100% agree with him. Did give some updates on Zay Flowers as well, saying that he has a tweak, like a soft tissue thing, should be back next week. And for minicamp, Gus Edwards should be partially ready, John Harbaugh said as well. Then looking at Chuck Smith a little bit. Chuck Smith, I think, was a great addition for this team, especially for young guys like Odafe Oweh and David Ojabo. And talked a little bit about the transition to coaching with an NFL team and said, it's a great place to be in Baltimore. It's been really easy. And talking about, the Castle's a great place to be. And said if there's a perfect place for him to start and kick off his first year, it was the Baltimore Ravens, he said. So that's really cool. Also talked a bit about Odafe Oweh and the points of emphasis to take his game to the next level. And said that he wants to teach him to understand that if he uses his moves, he'll have success. And so the guys who in the NFL who use their moves have success. And right, if you just talked about Terrell Suggs with that long arm power he had, Von Miller with the spin, and Reggie White, he's talking about Lawrence Taylor, Dwight Freeney, all those guys. But for Odafe Owe and David Ojabo, and even talking about Jeremiah Moon and Tavius Robinson, they're working to be the best parts of this defense that they can be, and they're going to have to develop moves at this level. So I think moves are a big emphasis, the signature move. So hopefully Chuck Smith will help those guys do that. And talked about David Ojabo a bit too. Said that he's everything he thought he was in Michigan. Quick, confident, twitchy, high pass rush IQ, mastered a lot of different moves too. But again, it's just a matter of refining all of that, all of those skill sets that he has, and said he's ready to make an impact. And I think that's really important too. They're working really hard right now. Chuck Smith ended up saying as well. Now for Kyle Hamilton, said that, gives him more confidence to be in the building for year two. He knows what to expect on a day-to-day basis and all that, a little more focused right now in trying to lead, but he said doing the right thing every day, which I think is a solid answer. And said he didn't really know his role, said he can do a multitude of things right now, but no one's really trying to pin him in one place at this point in his career. And he did say it's still June, which I agree with him. It's very early in the process right now. So he said, depending on the week, the game, the personnel, things might switch around, but he's just trying to get everything down as much as possible. And then was asked about if he's, we know he's willing to play all the positions, but is there a spot he feels most comfortable in? And he said there wasn't necessarily one spot that he feels most comfortable in. And then described it. He went into detail. I thought it was really cool. He said at nickel, you're closer to the action. You can't see as much behind you. That's necessarily the safety's job. You got to communicate. With nickel, also the footwork in terms of man and getting out through the zone and stuff like that. It all complements things. And talked about safety, knowing where everybody is, knowing checks, and that complements the nickel and other positions. So he's really trying to get as much down as possible, which again, we don't know where Kyle Hamilton's going to play. We talked about that on yesterday's show, but the fact that he can play all those different roles for them is going to be a huge asset, and honestly was for them last year. And then talked about, when he figured it out his rookie season. I think we all kind of pinpointed the New England game and really saw consistent growth from him. But he felt like he was young last year, getting reps, and the more reps he got, the more comfortable he got. And that's common throughout the league, which is 100%. And told himself at a certain point just to let loose. And guys sometimes don't play well when they're thinking too much and playing tight, which Kyle Hamilton said. So he said he doesn't play well. And so when he just lets loose and goes, that's when he plays his best. And then Hamilton was asked about Marcus Williams and what it would be like to get a lot of reps for them together because they didn't play a lot last year together. And Hamilton said, it was annoying that he got hurt for a good amount of the year. Everybody saw what he did before and after the injury. So he was annoyed for Marcus Williams that he went down. But to have someone in the room like that every day, it's crazy for Marcus Williams. It's year 7, which Kyle Hamilton said he's getting old. But again, he teaches Hamilton a lot, he said, mentally, how to attack every day, how to watch the film, adapt to certain coverages. He says he gives him a lot of confidence in his game, and that's helped him over the past couple of years. So he said hopefully it's going to be a bright future for those two and him in the NFL, and I hope so too. I think Hamilton has a star factor in this league, and we'll see how it all pans out for him for sure. But that's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. Again, thank you so much for being here, tuning in to the channel and the show, whether it is in video or audio form. When we get back here tomorrow, we'll be rounding out the week with more Ravens content, so be sure to stay tuned for that. I'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.